Welcome to this episode of Cobweb Garage, where we look at Lambretta electrics and converting AC to DC. Oh, sorry, that's my phone going. Let me just see who that is. Brian Johnson. Brian, I said AC to DC. Brian, are you there, Brian? Brian, I told you before, you're not coming on the show. Right, I'm putting the phone down, Brian. Bye. Now, before we start this episode, I did make a mistake on the last episode. I got the petrols mixed up. I did actually buy E5 petrol to put in the scooter, but when I came to explaining it on camera, I got the E5 and the E10 completely the wrong way around. So I apologise for that. I had so many comments about that, putting me right. Thank you very much for that. Now, I don't want to explain to you myself why you shouldn't put E10 in your classic car or vintage vehicle. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague who can explain things much better. May I introduce Professor Scotticus.
E10. What you should know about it, it contains bioethanol content which can be corrosive to rubber parts, gaskets, seals and metal. It also can cause problems in your fuel system with carburetor corrosion and a fuel hose degradation. The ethanol can also absorb water from the surrounding condensation, etc., and cause further engine problems and bad running. So, let me recap. E10, no. E5, yes. Thank you. See you next time.
I am actually recovering from the Rona, I'm afraid, so I am not feeling 100% just at the moment, but I wanted to come into the garage, crack on with a little bit of work, and thought I'd tackle the electrics on Oddbod. Hopefully it's not too strenuous a job to do. So I have collected some parts and I'll go through those in a second, but I just want to talk a little bit about the electrics and what's going to be involved. Now, the other issue I have, of course, is I don't know exactly what the engine is even. I bought this scooter as an unfinished project. I've looked through my manual, compared it to the wires that are coming out of the engine, and there are several matches. It does appear to be a 6-pole magneto, but I don't know what work's been done in the past to the electrics anyway, so it might not be original. The electrics connected up to the CDI box here is working the ignition and spark perfectly well, so I'm not too worried about that. Obviously I need to connect a ignition cutout, which I'll show you what I've bought for that, or which ignition I bought for that in a minute. The only two wires then left are these two yellow, well, one's yellow and red. And I've tested those, I put my meter on them, and obviously it's alternating current, but it's definitely a 12 volt. At least I'm getting from this, so it's not 6 volt, which is good news. So what I'm going to concentrate on is obviously connecting those up and making everything else work. Lights, horn, brake light, etc. So let's go through the stuff I bought to start with. I've got a wiring loom, pretty much the simplest wiring loom I could find, because I'm going to have to adapt it a lot anyway. In fact, almost starting again because of the flip loop. Obviously the wires to the back light have to run around the loop for a start. The back brake's in slightly different position. Obviously it's connecting up to the handlebars in a completely different position as well. I do have a wiring loom, but it will get heavily modified. I have an ignition switch. Some of you might recognise this. is from a Vespa. Normally fits to the top of the headset on a Vespa, but I will be using that obviously in a different position. What I will say though, it feels much more solid than a Lambretta ignition switch, so quite pleased about that. And I really picked this because of its very shallow design. Next I have an inline fuse. I want to attach that. I have the front light there. I purchased a new bulb to go in there. Showed the rear light in the last episode. I've got a bulb to go in there. I have got a switch here to go on the handlebars, and that switch will control the lights and the horn. I have a rectifier as well from BGM, Rectifier Regulator. I'll go into more detail on that later. Some heat shrinks to go over the cables, keep it nice and tidy. I've got a load of connectors there, insulated connectors. Here I have Wiring Loom wrap. Now apparently this is the stuff to get. Tessa, heard a lot of good reviews on that. I have my soldering iron kit there and some odd bits of wire. So those are all the bits we have to play with, and I'm going to start with fitting the ignition switch there. Let's get on with that. Not sure if you can see it easily, but I have drilled the hole through there, and I've had to chop out a bit of this bracket for the ignition switch to fit. And obviously I've just touched it out with some paint. I'm going to wait for that to dry before fitting the switch itself. Okay, I've got this new Wiring Loom now, and I just want to go through briefly what's in this loom. Not a lot. The main three cables that run through it are brown, which is a power cable. You've got a black, which is a link from your front light all the way to your back light, and the green. Now the green is the ignition cutout. The only other wire in there is a pink, which is from your rear brake switch. And that is about it. I have sort of put some labels on just so I know in my mind what is what and what goes where. But I'm going to pull the green out because obviously on a standard scooter the ignition would be up on the headset. But my ignition switch, as you've seen, is right down here at the base of the loop. So I just need it to go from there to the CDI unit there, not very far. So there's no point in it running all the way through the frame. So I'm going to pull that out and cut that down to use that. There's the ignition switch and the green wire which runs to the CDI. That will get wrapped as part of the loom. And just to show you, that then grounds to there. At the moment then it is grounded without a key in, which means that you won't get any spark. And then turn the key, ignition on, and you'll get a spark. That took way longer than it should have done, mainly because I had to remove this blooming fuel tank. Next job, I think I'm going to try and get the loom through the frame. I don't want to fill the thing full of holes, but I also don't want to have the wires, you know, exposed, running around the frame with cable ties, etc. So I'm going to drill a hole around about there, so the main loom can run through the frame, come out where the cables come out there, and also one other hole just by the brake pedal switch there. I think that's all I need to do, just 2 holes, and I think that'll keep the loom hidden. So just a quick check-in with you guys. Here we have the 2 brown power wires. One goes to the back brake switch and one goes up through the frame to the headset. Then we have the return power from the headset, that goes to the back light, and that is the brake switch to the back light. So that's coming out of the frame there. There's the loom coming out of the frame. I'll go to the handlebar switch, and there's the back brake switch. So next job is I'm going to connect these together and connect it to the inline fuse, and then I'm going to run these here, and I'm going to have to extend some cables up around the loop to the back light. So I've connected out one side of the inline fuse. So I think the next job I'll do is fix the back light, and then I can run the cables to there, and then we'll have a couple of connections there. So if I ever want to take the loop off, I can just undo the connections there and the loop will come off. You may have seen me using this earlier just to check that we had voltage coming from the magneto. It's called a power probe, really simple thing, and you normally connect it to your car battery or whatever, so you can test your circuits, etc. But also just at a push of a button you can add 12 volts, which is from the battery, to your circuits just to test things are working. So as I'm going along, I'm just testing things are working. Got it hooked up to the rear brake light here. If I touch on this, press the button, I'm going to add 12 volts, and there you can see the light coming on, and that's the brake light, so it's how bright it is. And if I test the other one, that should be your normal light. There you go, there's your normal back light. So yeah, a great little tool, super simple to use, just helps you check things as you're going along. So cables running up to the rear light are connected. I need to wrap those, but I also need to get some kind of fixings to affix to the inside of the loop. Next, I'd like to connect up the light switch and horn switch, and I am thinking it's going to look cool just about there with the sort of inlet. Hopefully you can see that, just going parallel to the handlebars, just on the corner there. I think that's pretty good. Just need to drill a couple of holes and that'll just screw onto those handlebars. So I've wired the inside of the light, and I'm just going to feed these wires up here, up to the switch through the loom sleeving. Light switch is fitted, just test that. So that should be normal beam, and that's high beam on the switch. And then if you look in the reflection in the window there, you can see backlight coming on, and then I'm just gonna, here's the brake switch, so I'm just looking at now, and you can see brake light coming on. If we switch the switch so the lights are on there, so you've got your backlight on, I'm going to hit the brake switch. There you go. So that's the electrics. Now at the moment I've just got that connected up to a car battery just to prove it all works. But I am liking that. Oh, one more thing, horn. Now, hopefully that's not the final horn, but there's a reason for that, which I'll go into a bit later. Anyway, we're getting there. Next stage is to bolt on the rectifier regulator there and then connect up power there and then tidy everything up. But I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. Together, I fell right under your spell. When we kissed for the first time, I fell right under your spell. When we got together, I fell right under your spell. When I held you close, I fell right under your spell. With that first embrace, I fell right under your spell. That is the electrics pretty much done. I just need to tidy up a bit of wiring here, which I'll do after a proper test drive, just in case I need to adjust anything. Just want to briefly elaborate on a few things I touched on during the episode, mainly being the rectifier regulator that I used. It was a BGM product, their code BGM6698. Which actually converts the alternating current which the scooter produces to a DC supply to the lights and everything. I've never used one of these before, but definitely impressed with it so far. The lights seem nice and bright, don't seem to flicker, they don't seem to dull down too much when you rev the scooter. So yeah, so far really impressed with that regulator there. What it did mean though was that I had to change the horn. I don't know if you remember the original horn, which I love the look of, but that operates on an AC supply and it actually needs the AC to work. So I had to swap that out for a cheapy DC. I don't love that DC horn, but it does work for now. I might work on that later in the future, swap that out for something that looks a bit better. I did get a comment on the last episode about using cheap parts. I think that was referring to the Speedo. And I have learnt my lesson this time because I did buy basically the cheapest back brake switch I could find, which came from Bead Speed, and it lasted about 2 minutes. I don't know if you can see there, but the terminal on the inside just broke out. So I ordered a new one from MB this time, seems to be much better quality, quite pleased with that. hopefully that one will last a lot longer. If this scooter was like an all Italian, completely original scooter, of course I would always try and buy, you know, quality Italian made parts, but you know, it's made up of everything from around the world pretty much. So I'm not too fussed, but yeah, I learnt my lesson with the brake switch. So that's it. Thank you so much to everyone that bought a t-shirt following the last episode. We actually sold out on a few sizes, so I have reordered and they'll be back in stock this week. So please follow the link below. Yeah, if you can buy a t-shirt, that supports the channel and is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Cobweb Garage. Thank you for your support and see you in the next episode. Cheers.